Oh no, here he is. This is Shane Wright. Good morning, Shane. Welcome back to Melbourne.
I love Melbourne.
This may be the last time for Insiders, mate.
Well, Insiders in Melbourne.
Indeed, absolutely. What is the government going to do for money when they shut down all the mines and petroleum exploration in Australia? The miners and the petroleum companies pay a lot of royalties and tax, don't they?
They do, but Australian workers pay far more than they pay.
I agree.
It's almost 3 to 1 more than those guys.
I agree.
Mining royalties are actually tax deductible.
Well, taxes are taken out of your taxable income, aren't they?
Well, they are.
I'm grateful to Shane for being prepared to have a quick chat with me. I believe this may well be the last opportunity that I have to speak with any arriving or departing panellists or politicians for Insiders on a Sunday morning. I did read that the program is going to be shifting to Canberra because, amongst other things, to reduce some of the costs in flying guests and the like to Melbourne when many of them are based in Canberra to begin with. And I have on occasions made reference to the fact that my carbon footprint is significantly lower than all of the global warming spruikers who appear on ABC Insiders on a regular basis. They fly down here at great cost to the taxpayers and at cost to the environment with the belching CO2 emissions from their flights. And I managed to just walk around from my residence in South Bank. So while I'm not one of the drum bangers about everyone else reducing their carbon footprint, at least I limit the emissions that I personally produce, whereas a lot of these spruikers, as far as I'm concerned, are climate change hypocrites. I think in terms of Barack Obama, who recently jetted to Australia for a speaking tour, for which I believe he was paid in the order of $1 million. But of course I read a few years ago that he and Michelle had paid $14 million US for a waterfront mansion at Martha's Vineyard, while and I think John Kerry has a waterfront at Martha's Vineyard as well, while these global spruikers telling everyone else to reduce their emissions and telling everyone else that sea level rise is going to swamp coastal areas. Don't listen to what they say, look at what they do. They buy waterfront properties. Kevin Rudd and Therese, I believe, have got a waterfront in Queensland. Julia Gillard has a waterfront in South Australia. Don't listen to what they say, look at what they do. Bill Thompson for Outside Insiders. Shane made the point that Saurian wage earners are a huge source of tax revenue for the government, and I agree with that totally. But the question remains, where do the salaries come from and wages come from to these employees and individual taxpayers who then turn around and pay tax? there are millions of individual taxpayers across Australia who work for various levels of government. And the source of the money via which the government agencies pay their salaries to their employees come from taxpayers. Generally speaking, in the private sector, including the mining and petroleum companies. Now, private companies derive income, deduct their expenses, and pay tax on their net income, their net profit. Was it Emma Alberici who disgraced herself a few years ago by suggesting that business people should be taxed on their gross income rather than their net or taxable incomes? With the mining companies, there are often years of exploration and development costs that go into a mine or a petroleum project before the income starts arriving. Which results in them having annual losses for years, if not decades in some cases, before they arrive at the situation of net profit. And they start to pay corporate tax. In the meantime, once the project gets underway and starts producing whatever product, whether it be coal or petroleum or other minerals, the state governments put their hands out for royalties. My understanding is that among the top 10 taxpayers in Australia, the 4 major banks are there, and several mining and exploration companies. Even if the companies have not arrived at a point of paying corporate tax in the life of a project, they are still paying state royalties and paying wages to their employees, who then turn around and pay tax. I was a former tax officer for 26 years, and I got paid a handsome return for my labours at the tax office. But I did assist in the raising of millions of dollars of revenue from individuals who had arranged their affairs so that they paid less tax than they should have. And I assisted them by discovering taxable income they didn't realise they had. But as a government employee, I acknowledged that my salary was paid by the government using funds that had come, for the most part, from private businesses, commercial activities, not government activities, which by and large, in and of themselves, may not generate income. Thank heavens for the private sector, who, in my opinion, carry the weight as far as taxes are concerned. Bill Thompson for Outside Inside. Here they are at the back door again. ABC still hasn't reported on John Stevens, Andrew. You're going to apologise for telling me to sod off?
No.
Okay. Ask him about it, David. He told me to sod off. That's what I'm talking about, John Stevens. I offered the national political editor for ABC, Andrew Probyn, an opportunity to apologise to me for telling me to sod off last year. And in my opinion, he is a worthless piece of shit, as are many of the top brass at their ABC News, who have presided over a situation since July 2017, where they were all too happy to cover in exquisite detail the charges against George Pell and his conviction and jailing for alleged pedophilia. His conviction was later overturned by the Supreme Court, by the High Court, 7-0. But their ABC TV News has never reported once on ABC's very own in-house convicted pedophile John Stevens, who back in the 1980s worked as a children's TV producer at ABC in Sydney. And there was an occasion, according to the court reports in 2017, when he took a 14-year-old boy, who I won't name, but who was named in past media reports. He took the 14-year-old boy on a location scouting trip to the Gosford area, and during an overnight stay, reportedly an overnight stay in a motel, he indecently assaulted the 14-year-old boy. Years later, the matter went before the court in Gosford. John Stevens pleaded guilty and was jailed, I think for 12 months. He was released early because of poor health, I believe. Because I began asking ABC talking heads about the matter back in 2017 and 18, I was approached by an individual who pointed out to me that there was a pending matter in the Downing Centre Court in Sydney involving the same John Stevens. I looked it up on court lists and found a matter listed as R versus JS with a particular case number. I did some further research and located an earlier reference with the same case number to a matter R versus John Stevens, JONSTEPHENS. My assumption at the time, back in around 2019, was that in order that John Stevens receive a fair trial in the new matter, that it was appropriate not to give his full name in the published case listing, so it was listed as R versus JS instead of R versus John Stevens. I decided to fly up to Sydney at the time at my own expense to attend the Downing Centre court, and it's my recollection that on the day in question I saw the slimy little turd John Stevens sitting in the gallery when the matter was called. It was subsequently adjourned to a later date early in 2020, and I would have been delighted to fly back up to Sydney for the next listed appearance for the already convicted John Stevens, but the slimy little turd died in December 2019. Their ABC TV News has never reported, to my knowledge, never reported about their own, ABC's own in-house convicted pedophile, and in my opinion likely a serial pedophile. It is possible that their ABC might have entered into a confidential settlement with the individual who was assaulted in the matter for which Stevens was convicted. And I understand that efforts should be made to protect victims in such matters. But in my opinion, the idea that the ABC gets away with reporting anything about their own convicted pedophile, John Stevens, who was convicted in relation to a matter that occurred while he was on ABC Business. The idea that the ABC can get away with not publicly disclosing that such a matter arose and that one of their then employees was convicted in relation to a matter of pedophilia, I find an absolute disgrace. Bill Thompson for Outside Insiders.